Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with the Superlative Podcast. My guest today is Kelly Yoch. She is the personal curator at Collectability, and she has a very extensive career in watches, including a lot of specialization in Patek Philippe. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
A couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to do an event at Hamilton Jewelers in Princeton, New Jersey, which is, I don't know if that was your first job in watches, but obviously you got your sort of feet wet there, so to say. That is a very interesting store location, isn't it?
So Hamilton Jewelers is very near and dear to my heart because it actually was the first.
Oh, the first. It was the first.
Yeah, it was the first job that I had in the industry. And I'm pretty proud of that only because at the time they were looking for a salesperson, and I think the typical salesperson when you walked into a jewelry store was white, male, a little older. You know, that was sort of like the stereotype, if you will.
Yeah.
And so they were looking to breathe some fresh blood, into the store atmosphere. And so I was the youngest person on the floor. I was female, and my job was to sort of capture that new business that was walking in the door that was maybe a little younger, and it worked. So, I was honored to work for a gentleman named Mike Hopper, who was the vice president at that time. Hank Siegel, still to this day, the owners of Hamilton Jewelers. I owe a lot of my career to Hamilton Jewelers, and the way Hank ran his business is, and still to this day, is quite extraordinary.
We just had Andrew, Hank's son, on the show just a couple of episodes ago, and I agree with you. There's something they do really well there. And I think part of the context of this conversation that I want to impress upon the listeners is that in the United States, even if you're selling a very prestigious, luxury product from another country, it's difficult for the brand to do that themselves. There's something about having a representative, a local representative like yourself, to connect the consumer and the brand. And that's sort of a theme that I want to build on here. I'm very, very wedded to the idea that when brands do well in the United States, it tends to be because of a cultural integration as opposed to a exportation of luxury, right? There's a difference between we want to work with you in the United States versus we know luxury and we're going to send it to you because we know better than you. And you agree that these different mentalities exist, right?
Wholeheartedly. I am very much still a brick and mortar person, whether that's my age or how I was brought up, in this industry. I am still all about a brick and mortar situation. I just think if you are spending that kind of money, and whether it's $500, $5,000, $50,000, you deserve to have an expert in front of you. You deserve to be able to try that on. You deserve to be able to enjoy an entire experience that goes along with, buying a luxury item of any kind. And so brick and mortar to me, I'm still a proponent. And, in the capacity that I'm working now, it's private curation. Yes, we are an online business, but my clients will be my clients till the day I die. And, if they're looking at something, then I'm going to be right in front of them, whether it's in their home or in our office or, wherever, for them to try it on and to fall in love.
But you're also acting as an important intermediary between the customer and the brand. And again, the brands have always wanted to bypass the intermediary, right? They see it as a middle agent, a middleman, so to say, cut out the middleman. But the reality is when you cut out the middleman, especially in this instance, you also cut out the relationship. And when you don't have the relationship, you don't have the loyalty. And let's be honest, there's a lot of really great watches out there. Patek Philippe especially has done so well because of relationships. And so that people like yourself, whether or not you're the unsung heroes, right? You really bridge the last mile gap, so to say, between a customer that wants to buy something and them actually buying it. And as much as the Europeans want to cut out middle agents, they just can't, can they?
Yeah. It's such a pleasure to talk to someone like you that really truly gets that. I mean, if this camera was turned off, and you're actually hitting some points that I get very animated. Animated is a good word. Animated about, and so because the camera's on, I'll keep my cool. But it's one of those things that I am very passionate about that, and I still can't believe the brands that they're in your store and yet they're trying to talk to your client as soon as you turn your back. And I had this happen only in the last couple of years, and the shock value is it's so intense to me, because they are telling you to work so hard to build their brand in your store, and then they come to the store and it's like, oh, we got it from here. I'm like, no, you don't. No. You're in my home. Respect it. You know what I mean? So, I still firmly believe that the client, especially with a multi-big box retailer, the client, then has the choice as well. You know what I mean? Like trying to show them something and their eyes are wandering. Well, yeah, let's talk about that brand too over there. And let's talk about, what kind of service we can provide to you. Let's talk about your repairs. Let's talk about, and so I am still a big supporter of big box retailers for that very reason.
And you have an amazing experience through some big box retailers, including, of course, Tourneau, which is now Curator, Saks Fifth Avenue, Tiffany. You have been at so many of America's major institutions of selling luxury products, watches, not just, of course, watches at some of those places. But you have an intuitive sense of understanding the experience that the customer wants. And no matter how much the Europeans try to study it from afar with data and their consultancy reports, they can't seem to figure it out, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's, it is interesting. Cause I love data. I do. It certainly helps when you're, studying, a topic, but, to study the human relationship, that's a whole different, ball game. And it's what I've done for literally the last 27 years. In college, I was a radio, television, and film major at Temple University.
Oh, cool.
And and so there was a lot of psychology that sort of went along with that as well. And, I felt guilty when I got out of college and I wasn't using my degree. And I remember having this discussion with my dad, and my dad's like, Kel, a college degree is never a waste. It's something that you're going to use every day. And he was 100% right, because the psychology of the human being is, it's especially in a luxury atmosphere when you're trying to sell them something, there's a lot more that comes into it than just selling them the item that's in front of you.
Well, the Europeans don't know that. How often do we still hear, no. The product speaks for itself. Once they discover how amazing our product is, they will want it no matter what.
No, and that's and that's actually not true. Yes, times have changed. Yes, maybe the map of selling a product has changed, or our society has changed. We're very much a digital society, but the fact is, I can tell you that I wait on people that are 25 years old to 90 years old, and all of them still want my time.
Yeah.
And it's important. And it's really important. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And especially, I'm back representing Patek Philippe, in a capacity with John Reardon that is very special, And this definitely is going to be going back to the old days, where, I'm selling vintage now and pre-owned, which is a different way of even selling. And, all these guys that I sold modern product to, I'm now revisiting them and saying, you know what? It's time to actually take that Nautilus on your wrist and say to yourself, where did it come from? And why don't we look at all of these other things that led to the Nautilus being created? Now, again, I'm using a very obvious, sort of a product, But, it's even like, the Calatrava or the annual calendar, or like, in 1996 when an annual calendar was made, like, why don't we look at the one that started the whole thing? You know what I mean? So it's different, and it still needs a very much a human component to do that.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about the team. I don't know all the team there, but of course I know John Reardon, who I think I wasn't there at the time in the 90s, but I think he was one of the original American storytellers of the European watch story. And he sort of has a museum, I'll call it an academic background and an auction background. And of course, others on your team do as well. But I think what typifies is you're all Americans and all specifically understand American purchasing habits, as well as what other Americans have liked in these European products. And you know the products very, very well, but you also know the customers so well. And then you're very unique in bringing both of those types of pieces of information to the table, knowing the consumer very, very well and knowing the product and history very, very, very well. And you are kind of that dream team, especially with the fact that you all represent the American mindset. Would you agree, or are there others out there like you? Because it seems a very unique team.
This is a very unique team. We have, again, it's a team of 4 people. And so John Reardon being, our leader, and again, the academic, like you said, I mean, there's just no one that knows more, about the topic of Patek Philippe. But right behind him is Tanya Edwards. And Tanya, who's British, by the way. Tanya has lived, but she's lived here in the States for a long, long time. And she worked for Henry Stern Watch Agency for quite some time. In fact, she hired John. So the two of them. That's
Patek Philippe, for those that don't know.
Yes. I'm sorry. Thank you. And she hired John. So she actually, the two of them together, coming from two different, very, interesting standpoints. The business aspect, I mean, nobody knows Patek Philippe inside and out the way Tanya does. Yeah. And then, you turn to John and there's no one that knows the product as well. Then you have me, who no one knows how to sell the product. You know what I mean? Like I'm the next addition to this team that's interesting, because you have these two very scholarly people, and I'm sort of the grit. I'm sort of the grit because I'm the one that's been on the front line selling the product literally for 27 years. And it's funny because, some of the little things that go on in the office, I still have to laugh, here and there, because I'm like, John, we can't keep the toys. We have to sell the toys, and John being, very, he's proud of all of his little toys. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And he's like, oh, we'll wait till the fall to sell this. And I'm like, no, we're going to sell it now. And and it's funny. And then there's Dave. Dave is a very young guy that is keeping this boat sort of running, because Dave is sort of our admin guy. So, when you have 3 people like John, Tanya, and myself, you need at least one person under 40 that is going to keep us all sort of in line and show us, all of the things that we need at our fingertips, like all of the admin stuff to keep it going. So the 4 of us, right now it's quite a dream team. It's great.
I'm curious to know what the current relationship with Patek Philippe is. All of you have worked closely with the company. Some of you have worked for the company. Oftentimes, there's a bit of a arm's length distance between somebody that sells a brand, even especially on a vintage or pre-owned, and the brand itself. But it seems to me that given your experience and, of course, the respect you have a special relationship with Patek Philippe. And I'd like to hear from you what that relationship is like.
So I have represented Patek Philippe in some way, shape, or form, literally for 27 years. Yeah. And what that means is, if you were to say my name in Switzerland, yes, we know Kelly. And there's a little bit of a smile, maybe a roll of the eyes, because I have done it in a very unconventional way. I'm not, I sell in a very, very different way. I've based my entire career on integrity.
You have to elaborate on that. You have to elaborate on what your special approach is.
I've based my whole career on actually telling the truth. Imagine that.
Okay? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of shocking. I get it. But, Kelly, do you like this? No, I don't think that's good for you. I think this would be good for you because I'm looking at the breadth of your, collection. And, I think this is right. I don't sell something just to sell it. I sell because it actually either is going to mean something to the client or it means something to me to sell it to him or whatever the case may be. I say him just because most of my clients are male.
Sure.
But, the relationship with Patek Philippe is one of respect. When I moved on from Tiffany, I remember the team from Geneva coming to visit at Watches of Switzerland. And I remember Jerome Pernisi, one of Terry Stern's right hand, men who's been with him for such a long time. Jerome made a beeline to me and talked to me about, why I left, and he actually cared. And what my goal was at Watches of Switzerland and what it meant to me. And it was so like heartwarming, you know what I mean? Because I was like, wow, he cares, it's actually, this is kind of neat, you know what I mean? Because he actually cared. The team in the United States, John and I don't do anything without getting Lisa Jones's blessing. It's very important to us. The president of Patek Philippe is very important to us that if we were to, let's say, do an event, in a store, we tell Lisa Jones, absolutely, like, hey, Lisa, these people have a very strong pre-owned business. And although they may not be representing Patek Philippe anymore, they were once somebody that represented Patek Philippe, and we just want to let you know. Or, they do represent Patek Philippe, but be assured that we're going to go into the store not representing anything that's currently modern. You know what I mean? Current stock.
Yeah.
Anything that we're bringing is 100% either retired or really vintage. So, that relationship that we still have with Patek Philippe USA is very important because it's out of respect, and they know for a fact that we are trying to preserve the brand in a very honest way.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that because it can get dicey. It's very competitive out there. And it's interesting that even though 3 members of your team have collectively spent more than a lifetime helping the company to make business, they still sort of have a bit of a skeptical look. They still want to know what's up. They still feel like they can control and be like, do this, don't do that. It's a very fine line to draw. And you ultimately want to preserve the positivity of that relationship because otherwise it's just awkward, right?
100%. And we have been very open with any move that we've made with Patek Philippe proper here in the United States, because it is very important to us that Geneva and the United States are on the same page with anything that we decide to do. Ultimately, it's our goal to, be one big happy family, and, what the future holds, we don't know. But, it's something that Tanya and John, especially on my invite into this company, said to me 100% that, Kelly, we really do think that you're the right person because you're bringing a different aspect to the team. But the ultimate goal is to eventually just all be family.
Right. I would like you to explain to people why Patek Philippe. Obviously, you and other people who have had an option of focusing on other brands have chosen Patek Philippe. I think from a consumer perspective, it can be difficult to understand really what distinguishes the brand. Obviously, they're popular. Obviously, they're very high end and they do well at auction. But do you have any statements or thoughts on helping sort of maybe even a more casual person understand what makes this brand, their history and their products different or distinct than the others in the market?
I today am still learning something every day about the brand. And, it was the watch of popes. It was the watch of kings and queens. It was the watch of the true gentleman. It was the watch of a lady. It was the watch of queens. It was what, it's just, it's so interesting when you peel back the layers of this brand and what you find. And if you were to say to a small child, draw a watch, and they sat down and they drew a watch, it would look like a Patek Philippe. It would look like a reference 96 or a 5196, a simple Calatrava, a 2-hand or a 3-hand, watch, manually wound and, on a strap with a plain buckle, and it's, to me, and again, listen, there are plenty of guys that I met, over the years that I tried to convince and I can't, and that's okay. That's why there's 80 bajillion other brands, right?
Yeah.
But there's something about Patek Philippe that when you delve into its history and you see the people that wore this brand, it's, for lack of better words, it's just special.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, my passion has always been vintage. I like old things, I love jewelry is my second passion, and I love antique jewelry, and I love antique watches of any kind. And it seems like, not that it's antique, but it's so funny because every time I pick up a Patek and I die over it, it's from the 1980s, and it's that's not vintage yet, really. I mean, I guess it is. I myself am vintage, so and I'm a 70s baby, so I'm definitely vintage, but. It's one of those things where, it's just a brand that spanned, from 1839, to today, and all of the different styles and whatnot. It really covered the gamut, and people don't realize that because, I think today when you think of Patek Philippe, and if you were to say it to someone, they think Nautilus and Aquanaut, when that is literally the smallest fraction of watches that they've done over the years. And if it were my goal to get everyone to wear a Patek Philippe, I would literally think of that child drawing a watch and just having this beautiful, 3-hand or 2-hand thing that tells time on a strap. There's just something endearing about that. And there's something very charming.
Right.
And it's just, it's just a brand that surprises me every day. And I think that's why I love the brand so much, because when I really dig and and John is so excited to open up a new package, and I'm sitting there and something comes out and it's like, what the heck is that? And John can spill some knowledge. Well, in 1964, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I am still learning. I think I know a lot, but I don't. And it's a brand that I enjoy learning about literally every day, for lack of better,
I remember the first time I went to the Patek Philippe Museum, which is a museum in Geneva. And it doesn't just have Patek Philippe in there, but it is the Patek Philippe Museum. But when you go there, one of the things that is impressed upon you is how many different types of things the brand has tried many, many generations ago, from designs to various types of themes that are represented today in a lot of other brands. Patek Philippe experimented with that. And so you're like, oh, I didn't realize they did that first, or they did that a long time ago. That, and it's interesting to see the breadth of things they've done. My final question on this particular topic is, when did the company enter what you might call as their modern era? A lot of these brands that have been in operation for over 100 years have gone through various types of phases. Obviously, Patek Philippe has been continually operating. But is there a particular time where you feel they've entered what their modern era is? Or was it sort of just a continual iterative process of slowly, growing as a company does?
John would be thrilled. And I'll say this. I think it was 1968 when they created the Ellipse. The Ellipse was this underdog. You couldn't sell them. You couldn't throw them in the garbage. I mean, you couldn't do anything with them because people were like, what is that? You know, it's so different. It's so odd. It's one of the most beautiful, elegant timepieces that they made. And that
It really
shape,
is.
yeah. And that shape actually, I think, launched people to just take another look. You know what I mean? And so, you know, in 1968, you had this oddly shaped watch. And then, you know, in 1976, here comes the Nautilus, which is also an oddly shaped watch. It's, you know, it wasn't common. And Patek has then they began to do like these different, you know, it wasn't just a round watch anymore. You know, it was these unique shapes, and, you know, they had reasons for why they did them. And I think 1968 was sort of a turning point. 1976 was a big turning point, because Patek wanted to prove that luxury, also came in steel, you know, and in the 70s, nobody was selling luxury watches, you know, but Patek Philippe came and said, hey, let's try this, you know, and they sat in the cases and people were like, okay. But I mean, look at the popularity once people like go back and really start to look. And I think that's what, you know, is so great about the age that we're in, because we, you know, walk around with these computers in our hands all day, and, you know, and you actually can, you know, ask yourself a question and answer yourself literally like right there. And
Great.
I think once people started to see that these, you know, shapes had meaning, and they were icons. And, you know, Gerald Genta was, you know, not a force to be reckoned with at that point. You know, he was making all these great shaped watches for everybody, you know. It like opened the door for a new generation to kind of look and say, oh, Patek Philippe is cool. It's not just my dad's watch. You know what I mean? And
Interesting.
So, yeah.
I would like to hear your thoughts on what triggered the massive popularity of the Nautilus, and then I guess subsequently the Aquanaut a little bit. This was, you know, just one of many watches that Patek Philippe made. It was never considered to be their masterpiece or their bestseller, but all of a sudden, the popularity of the Nautilus shot up. Of course, you were in the industry at the time and selling Patek Philippe. What do you account for that huge spike in popularity?
I think at the time, you know, when I joined Tiffany, it was in 2008, and it had already been a tough watch to get. It had already been a tough watch to get. And there's going to be plenty of guys that will tell you like, oh, I could walk into any store and they were in the case and I could buy it discounted. And I'm like, really? It's so interesting. Okay. Well, at Tiffany, that was never the case, because Tiffany stamped watches were always rarer than, you know, anything else. And so from the time I walked through those doors, everything was hard to get because it had a stamp on it. And I think, again, we entered this age where we are given too much information. So we walk around with these computers in our hands, and I think that we're given too much information. So everyone found out that you couldn't get it. So they wanted it.
Why is that? Explore that psychology for a moment.
I swore up and down that I would never have that mentality, because I never wanted a fad. Even as a kid. Never got into designer jeans, never got into Uggs, never got into anything that anyone else had. I didn't want. And my mom was even like, what a weird kid, you know?
I'm the same way as you. I walked the other way from popularity.
I absolutely wanted nothing to do with something that everybody had. Didn't make sense to me. So I remember the date. It was no joke. This was in 2015. I saw a pair of sneakers online that I wanted. So I tried to buy them. Sold out. Okay, go to another website. Sold out. Go to another website. Sold out. So I'm like, whoa, what do you mean I can't have these? And then I called a friend in Kuwait, and I literally said to him, can you get these sneakers? And he's like, yeah, of course. I mean, Kelly, they're a simple sneaker. And I'm like, yeah, okay, find them. He found them for me in like Lebanon. He found them in Lebanon.
Wow.
He whatever. And I'm like, oh no, I will not be told no. And I sat back and I thought to myself, oh my God, I just did what everybody else is doing. We can't be told no. We have the money.
Interesting.
We we have the money. We want to buy something. And you're telling me I can't? Don't be ridiculous. Now, I fell into this over a $100 pair of sneakers. But then I really sat back and I'm like, okay. So I was a late bloomer. Took me a long time to get there, but I got there. I had the moment. And now those sneakers, when I look at them today, because I still have them, I'm like, I'm not going to wear them because I had that moment that I was acting like all of these other guys that were like, they didn't even know why they wanted it. For me, the sneaker had sparkles on it. I love myself some glitz and glam, and so they were a funky color. They were one of my favorite colors, and they had like sparkled studs and all this like crazy crap on it. You know what I mean? And I had to have them. And now I really think about it. If someone said to me, "No, you can't have them," am I going to die? No. Am I gonna be sad for probably 20 minutes, and then I'm going to get over it? You know what I mean? But this obsession that grew over these sports watches was like nothing I had ever seen in my life. And I didn't understand it. I still to this day don't. I don't.
It's a weird thing. And I'm glad you were very honest with me about it, because I also cannot expertly explain the popularity. I think that there's a sort of an upside and downside of this. One of the things, the upside is it's wonderful to chase something rare. When there's something that's actually difficult to get, actually exclusive, it can be a privilege, sort of like a treasure hunter, to find it. But I think at the same time, there's also a mentality that's too easy to get into where there's, I don't want to call it artificial scarcity, but there's the psychology of insecurity. And a lot of brands know that if you dangle something and make it hard to get, it makes that customer want it all the more. And I noticed that it's pretty easy to see that coming when you've gone through this process a few times. And I wonder if a watch lover who's experienced that the second time around, they're like, wait a minute, is it really that rare? Because the reality is there's always a good watch to get out there. There are so many lovely watches that, they're like animals that need to be adopted. They need wrists to live on. There's no shortage out there.
Actually.
Yeah. There's no shortage of amazing watches out there.
So my favorite, and I'll say this, and I may get in trouble, but I'm going to say it. The Tiffany Blue 5711, guys, that ain't rare. Okay. 170 pieces is not rare. I'm sorry. It's not. The 5711 white with the white dial, that's big time rare, because we didn't even see at Tiffany, we didn't even see half of 170. So, it's funny, the perception of rare and what is actually rare.
Yeah.
A 5196 three-hand Calatrava is more rare than a 170 piece Tiffany Blue Nautilus.
But people know about the Blue Nautilus, and it's the awareness plus the rarity which creates that insecurity.
Exactly. And it's so interesting to me because, my old coworkers who, were at the salon with me, Vicky, Jason, and George, when that watch was revealed and when it was told to the public that there were 170 pieces, we all laughed because we were kind of like, oh, okay. And, we were like, to use the word rare when and again, the public doesn't know, but I know, and everybody knows that, that worked with me, that 170 is not rare.
In the scheme of watches, it's not. There's a lot of watches. That's just a standard production.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that.
Hey, no problem. And it's, I'm not looking down upon it. I don't, it was again, LVMH's choice to do that along with Mr. Stern. And, more power to them. You know what I mean? Like, listen, it started a phenomenon and a craze that was like nothing I had seen. And, it was an interesting sort of, lesson, you know what I mean? In the world of, Patek Philippe. And I still have to laugh because, what does the word rare mean? You know what I mean? It's like, it's taken on a different sort of, meaning when it comes to certain watches.
Maybe you can actually explain for people the specific history between Tiffany & Company and Patek Philippe, because they do have a unique relationship. They're not the same company. Mm-hmm. Obviously, for many years, Tiffany was, an American owned, and then LVMH acquired it a couple of years ago. And people know that there's Tiffany & Company watches. So maybe you could explain very briefly, what is the relationship between Tiffany & Company and Patek Philippe, and why was it special?
So, literally in 1851, Mr. Patek heard that there was a gentleman in the United States that was selling, really important luxury goods in a time when nobody really was. And so Mr. Patek wanted that exposure because he truly felt that he had an outstanding product. And so Mr. Patek literally came over on a boat with his watches. He showed them to Mr. Tiffany, and on a handshake, Mr. Tiffany put them in the case. Now, Mr. Tiffany actually said to Mr. Patek, like, hey, listen, nobody knows you, but they know me. So let's put my name on the dial. And Mr. Patek agreed, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a great idea. If I'm gonna, come into this new market, I should partner with someone that's already been successful. And so, one of my favorite things to find are all of these Tiffany pocket watches out there with Patek Philippe movements. I mean, those are gems.
Yeah.
And I think we have even one or two of them in stock at the moment. And to me, they're a gem. And so literally on a handshake, Mr. Patek, Mr. Tiffany did business, and, they have kept that relationship, since literally 1851. So Tiffany was the oldest American retailer for the brand, Patek Philippe. And that's why in 2008, when Mr. Stern decided he wanted to basically have like a more important presence in the United States, he couldn't ignore the longstanding relationship that Tiffany had with Patek Philippe. And that's why the salon, was basically there as opposed to freestanding on the street somewhere else. And so,
interesting.
I still to this day, I believe that, a collector of many Patek Philippe's, it's important to have a Tiffany stamp piece in your collection. It's important just because if you're American, it's important, it's something that really represents the longest standing relationship that Patek had. And, in the States, I'm a proud American. I just think it's something that really, really shows that American relationship, and you should have one in your collection.
And I want to explain a little context for those that don't know that while in the modern era you don't see this, historically it was very common actually for someone going into a jewelry store to buy a timepiece with the name of that jewelry store on the dial. The movement and wasn't by them, it wasn't cased by them, but the idea was that people knew the jewelry store owners and wanted to buy from them, didn't know, as you said, the name of the watchmaker. So that was just sort of representing a common practice in Tiffany style. It was actually interesting that it was sort of dual signed, but historically speaking, especially the era, the watchmaker's name would not have even been on the dial. It would have just been the retailer. So that wasn't sort of a strange thing, but I just wanted to add that some historical context. I want to go back a little bit to you starting your career, as you said, as the rare woman in the context. This has been, unfortunately, kind of a male-dominated area in a lot of ways, and we've seen a lot of changes recently. But talk a little bit about what was weird about that at the time, some of the hurdles you had to overcome, and then also, I think what's interesting, the benefits that came from not being the man in the suit.
Interestingly enough, my time at Hamilton Jewelers was really interesting because we had a gamut of clientele. So we had, old money from Princeton and Skillman, that lived there, that, horse farms and, and whatnot. And then we had all of the, let's say, I had a big book of car guys, the guys that owned, the Volkswagen dealership or the Ford dealership or, whatever. We had a lot of car guys that shopped with us, and for watches that were like, anywhere from like $5,000 to $10,000. And that was, my specialty for a long time. I believe that men enjoy working with a woman that can speak technical. I do. I think it's empowering. I think it's interesting. And I think that a man psychologically will buy from a woman if she can hold her own, and have those conversations that are very technical. I think he finds it intriguing. I think they find it sexy. I think it's kind of, something that is different. And so I held my own with the men that were on the floor. And, I showed the gentlemen the same customer service that they would get if they were speaking to my coworker, Mark or Jonathan or, whatever. And I made sure that any brand that was thrown at me, I learned from A to B and A to Z, excuse me. And so, I've always had a personality that was, I'm very forward. I'm very loud. I'm very, sort of in your face a little bit. I don't look the same as other women. I have sort of a unique look, which I've always had, that distinguishes me, out from, I guess, the crowd. And I was never scared. I never shied away from anything. I never, was timid about something. If somebody asked me a question I didn't know, guess what I said? I don't know. I'll find out for you.
Yeah.
And people always appreciated honesty. And I think that, they appreciate that no matter if you're man, woman, dog, whatever, behind the counter. That's just, I think, important, again, integrity and honesty. We had a lot of women that worked the floor that were only interested in selling jewelry. If we had a male dominated clientele, which we did, then you kind of needed to know all of it, and that's just psychology 101, sitting on the floor and seeing who's walking in the door. And if it's man after man after man, well, then you better know all of it, because they're going to buy for their wives, but they're also going to meander over to the watch counter to see what's new. And so, to me, it was just about taking care of the customer in a full capacity. So I used to partner with some of the females that were only interested in selling jewelry. And I used to say to them, like, I'll sell your watches. You can sell my jewelry. I'm not interested. And, it was half of something was better than nothing, right? I couldn't stand behind the counter and talk about a David Yurman bracelet for 6 hours. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't sell a diamond ring because, people wanted to talk about the 4 C's. Listen, I'm actually an accredited AGP, GIA certed, blah, blah, blah person, because I had to be. Hank Siegel was not selling, jewelry that you would find in a Macy's. He was selling extremely fine jewelry that you would find at Tiffany's and Cartier, very high-end brands. And so, again, that was just part of, having the knowledge and the want and the wherewithal of knowing everything that you sold in the store. And so, but it wasn't my passion. Watches were. And so I partnered with quite a few of the females saying, like, I'll help you with this if you help me with that. And, it also then formed a family. I mean, when I worked there, the family that we had was incredible. And I still today notice that when I go to Hamilton Jewelers. Actually, I just did an event with them for collectability. We were at their watch fair, and we came with some product. We had about 15 pieces, and we set up a little case and whatnot. And I was there for the weekend, and I didn't miss a beat. It was amazing. It was amazing to still have that family.
Yeah, really it's a great environment. I've been to that fair. Yeah. It's a fun thing. I want to talk more about this because I think there's a psychological element that really benefits the right type of relation with the consumer. And I've noticed that, especially when it comes to something like a Patek Philippe, which is very technical and very high-end, sometimes with a salesperson, oftentimes a man, there can develop almost a confrontational conversation with the buyer. It's like, who knows more? Do you know more? Do I know more? And rather than it being about satisfying the ego and the whims of the buyer, it becomes like a weird fight. And I
Oh,
suspect that you never fell into that. You realize, like, wait a minute. It's not about winning. It's about making this person feel good. You're smiling now, so please expand upon that.
I absolutely used to love when people would come into the Patek Philippe salon and try to be confrontational. Like, first and foremost, and I actually said this, and I broke somebody down because he couldn't believe I said it, and his wife had to like leave the room because she was laughing so hard. This guy gets off the elevator. He's very confrontational, nasty, having a bad day, maybe, I don't know.
Wow.
And he started to test me, and I said to him, "Sir, can we stop for a second?" He was like, "What do you mean? What do you do for a living?" "What?" I said, "What do you do for a living?" He says, "I'm a patent lawyer." I said, "Okay.
There you go.
Here's what we're going to do." I said, "I'm going to come to your office on Monday, and I'm going to tell you all about patent law. And when I tell you that I don't know anything about patent law, but I'm going to tell you all about it, what do you think about that?" And he literally just like, he knew he was caught. Do you know what I mean? And because he's trying to tell me about the relationship that Tiffany and Patek had. And when I timidly and kindly said to him, "Well, actually, sir, that was like the 80s and that, and he like jumped down my throat. He was very nasty about it. And so when I said that to him, he actually, like, his eyes got wide and he was literally like, "That's funny." And I said, "You know what, sir?" And I held my hand out to shake his hand. And I said to him, "I appreciate how, you're very passionate about this, but please give me the benefit of the doubt that I actually know what I'm talking about." I said, "Please, and I said, and if I give you wrong information, you have every right to come back and tell me that I'm wrong." I said, "But please don't make me come to your office on Monday because I really don't know anything about patent law." And he was just like, and his wife was literally like, "Thank you." And because she was embarrassed. She was embarrassed by the way he was, and he's like, he goes, "I'm sorry." He goes, I'm sorry." I'm like, "You know what? Would you like a coffee? Let's sit down. Let's look at a couple of pieces. Let's actually, talk about this." And I said, and I'm all about a debate, I said, "But please just give me the benefit of the doubt that I may know what I'm talking about. That's all, But I had to laugh because I just was like, "I'm coming to your office on Monday, pal, and we're gonna."
So being able to diffuse that type of situation is a skill that goes above and beyond. Let me tell you about this chronograph.
I mean, again, like, you and I started the conversation with the fact that there's a whole psychology. You're dealing with humans, and so there is a whole psychology about how to treat people and what not to do, and what. And if I had my bad days and I've gotten in trouble for not saying the right thing, 100%. I mean, listen, I'm a quick, mouthed person, and if I've said the wrong thing, and I've offended someone, the first thing I do is I say to them, like, "I didn't realize that what I was saying was offensive, and I am so sorry that you found that offensive, and let me reword this, let me go back, whatever." But listen, I've gotten in trouble before about that, but the fact is to go to someone's home, and I put that in quotation marks, to go to someone's home and actually tell them about their home, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't go to the dentist and tell him how to pull teeth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to watches, this type of attitude kind of comes with the territory. You're talking about a consumer who has disposable income and has achievement, not only likes to win, but likes to feel a sense of power. And at the end of the day, the reason they buy that watch is to feel good. It is to celebrate themselves. And so I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, but really the entire thing is about their ego. And if you buy into that and you help them facilitate a situation that helps them to promote their ego, you will do well. But if you attack their ego unfairly, you might be right, but you're not going to be doing business with them, are you?
Correct. And it's just, it's a matter of, can we just actually just treat each other like human beings? And, like I said, I'm the first person to tell you if I don't know something, You know what, sir? If you do you have a moment? Just give me a moment, and I actually know where to get this answer for you. If you don't mind. If you don't, then may I have your email address, or can I have your phone number, and I will get back to you. But to stand behind a counter and act like you know everything, that's also the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of being a human being. You know, I mean, my father is a CPA, and today I asked him a question that he had to look up. I mean, it's this is common for us to be know-it-alls about everything at all times. And
we don't need
special.
to be, because as you said, the answer is just seconds away on this device that we're carrying with us. What's more important is not, are you an encyclopedia, is do you know how to make that person feel good?
Yeah. Yeah, it's 100%. I have preached that for so many years. Getting to know their spouses, their children, knowing special dates. Again, this is retail 101, but those things are actually so important. Remembering a tidbit from a conversation that you had is so incredibly important. To call them, let's say a week later, and say, listen, you mentioned that you were having a really special meeting about a promotion. Like, did you get it? Like, how did it go? You know what I mean? Like, it just lands home with them so much, because again, you have to respect the fact that they chose you to do business with. Because let's face it, how many doors, carry Patek Philippe? A ton. But they chose to come through my door. So I need to make sure that they are sat down, they're given a beautiful experience. They're told about the product in a reverent way. And I actually am giving them a chance to talk and tell me exactly what they're looking for, why they're looking for it, and how. You know what I mean? So yeah, all of those things are just super important.
I want to build on that for a moment here, because I think it's so important to distinguish watches and jewelry from selling other things. Like if you're selling a car, people come to you when they have the need, and then after that, you don't really need to reach out that much, because it's just not how it works.
Exactly.
But with watches and jewelry, the best retailers in America that I've seen, and I think the people at Hamilton are a great example of it, they become a quasi-member of the family. They are there for the celebrations. They show
100%.
up. They'll go to the bar mitzvahs. They'll go to the weddings. Okay, they'll go to the anniversary parties. They will remember the important people and dates. And that relationship, because it celebrates that family, is why they come to them to celebrate. I remember years ago, this was one of the first JCKs I went to, a retailer from, I think it was Louisiana or something. They said, we don't sell watches and jewelry, even though they do. We're in the celebration business.
Yes.
And I really, really took that to heart and understood it. And one of the things to gain is that once you have established that positive relationship, those customers stay with you as long as you're both alive.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 100%. Listen, I'm having lunch this Friday with someone that was a client at Hamilton Jewelers. I mean, they've been with me. I've known them literally for 27 years. Saturday, my husband and I are going to dinner with, again, a couple that I was at their wedding in 1999. Yeah. It's just, and they're friends of ours. I mean, they're over in our pool. We're grilling in the backyard, and that's a thing.
And no brand, no foreign brand, no matter how amazing their product is, can do that. You have to have that local representation in some way or another, or else you're not going to be part of the family, so to say. So thank you for sharing this experiences. We only have a few more minutes. We'll obviously have to have more chats about this. I want to go back to collectability. You mentioned that you sell vintage and pre-owned and things like that. Where do the watches originally come from? I imagine you go out there, you have to source, then you have to decide what makes sense for us, and then you have to present it or curate the right way. But where do the watches, at least from collectability standpoint, where do they originally come from?
A good portion of ours actually come from private collectors that have been with John or myself or know Tanya, and it's time for them to, they've amassed these huge collections and their children are just not interested. Or their children are just interested in one aspect of the collection and they're not wearing them anymore. Or they want to trade into something different. Maybe they've amassed, all chronographs and they don't they actually like now, listen, our taste change. My taste changes all the time, and so, or they've never worn gold before and they want to wear gold or whatever. Then, John has purchased things at auction that, are not loved, let's say. We then will do a special video on them to tell them why. Something can sit at auction. Let's say the bid is, 10 to 15,000 and it goes for $8,000. Well, John is that guy that buys it because he knows he's seen it. He knows why it's special. So we'll do a curated video or something on it to explain why. There are dealers who have people come into their shops all the time, and maybe their specialty is Rolex or Universal Genève, but they'll take a Patek and trade and they really don't know what to do with it. So there's a lot of those small guys in states that, you just don't think about. Like, I had somebody reach out to me from Charleston, South Carolina, that again, Patek Philippe came in his door. He didn't know what to do with it. He just doesn't have the clientele for that.
Right.
And so, we're happy to take those kinds of things and buy them, direct. But most of our pieces come from private collectors.
Are you ever presented with situations where a family wants to sell you an entire collection? Maybe someone passes away or something like that, and then they're like, here's 100 watches. Do you want them all? How often does that happen?
Well, I've only been there a short time, but I know that John has definitely done some estates, and what we'll do is we'll consign them. Obviously, if there's too many, we'll sell them one by one and pay the family. Do you know what I mean? Like, as we go.
You can't spend tens of millions of dollars on an acquisition. That's crazy.
Right. Exactly. But if somebody came to us with, let's say, 4 or 5 watches, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But yet, no, we will absolutely work with families that's where we find some of the greatest treasures you've ever seen. So
it's fascinating because it's kind of like, I don't remember the name of the show, but one of those like pawn shows where, you're sitting there, you have no idea what's going to come in and you just get to be
amazing.
I have a friend in Las Vegas who's a pawnbroker, and he just loves this idea where people present him with stuff and he gets to nerd out about it. He gets to select, he find the hidden things, especially when the person selling it doesn't know that it's cool. And it's not like you're trying to take advantage of them, but like literally they paid a certain amount. They're happy with that money. Doesn't matter to them if someone elsewhere wants it for a lot. They just want to get rid of it and feel like they're making out. And so you get to literally play with treasure on a regular basis. It's very exciting.
It's very exciting. And that's what, it almost cracks me up going to the office because John's like, when do you see this? And you're like, oh no. You're like, oh God, what is it? You know what I mean? But he has infused that excitement into me. And now I get excited every time I see a package come to the office. I'm so excited about it. And it makes me laugh because it's more exciting to me than my own Amazon packages. I still get excited about that, but it's hysterical because, you just never know, because I love seeing the condition. I love seeing, how the dial has maybe patinaed. I love that stuff. So yeah, I mean, we got something yesterday that, the dial patinaed in a way to the color got so much darker. Oh, it's so beautiful. And like, we'll be photographing that soon and putting it on the website. It's something that I would love to actually, again, do one of those special videos about, because people don't understand that that's actually a natural thing. No one touched that dial. It just happened to get old and cool.
That's so cool when that happens. Correct me if I'm wrong, but collectability only deals with Patek Philippe, or are there other brands that you sell as well?
No, it's only Patek Philippe. I think John will maybe think about, brands that had an enormous impact on the watchmaking industry. I think that could be something maybe in our future. That, brands that are really special that people don't know about, like maybe some British brands or something that really impacted the world of horology that are special that people just don't know.
So that's very interesting that it's you have enough within the world of Patek Philippe to actually have a whole business around. And there might be some incentive to add some other ones, but just with Patek Philippe, just specializing in there, that's enough for you.
Yes.
That's remarkable. Kelly, we're about out of time. I would like it if you could remind people where to go on the internet to learn more about yourself and any particular places you want to plug, including the collectability.com website, of course.
So our website's simple, collectability.com, our YouTube channel, because we do the same thing you do, as far as podcasts. So we always have some really entertaining guests. So our YouTube channel, we'd love for people to follow that as well. And I can be reached at Kelly. It's very simple, Kelly@collectability.com.
This has been the Superlative Podcast interview with the personal curator at Collectability, Kelly Yoch. Kelly, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.